All right.
Oh! Guys, welcome to another episode. We are doing a lowrider 110 Dyna variant versus
Super Glide 103 Street Bob. Same shit. Same thing.
Now,
Same
obviously,
thing, but different.
You know they're pretty modified, so it is hard to do a complete comparison, but we're going to go over a couple of things that, some things you might not know and you need to know before you put your hand in your pocket and you buy a bike, whether it's worth it for you, you care, you don't care, because there's some things that we'll go into that literally could save you $3-4 grand, no worries. So we'll get into that and we'll compare both the bikes yeah.
We'll run it down from the front, I guess. Best thing about the low S compared to a Street Bob or a Super Glide dual disc front end, that's a massive plus. I reckon as well, because they are newer, especially on my Model 1, I've got a different front brake caliper, an older version one that probably isn't as big as those, so that's another plus.
So I guess you got a better braking power. They do work a little bit better. I mean, it's nothing crazy, but they definitely do work better. If that is something, if you're doing hard riding, that could be a bonus to you, but maybe you don't like the look. And because when Sam Taylor was down, when I was watching some of those slow-mos with that big one disc,
yeah,
it looks
it does look good.
It looks sick. So even though I do have front disc and I wouldn't get rid of front disc, sometimes if you don't really care about that, the one disc look can look a bit more traditional and looks a little bit less sporty and it looks pretty cool. So that's sort of personal preference, but yes, those brakes on the lowrider 110 do work better. On the lowrider S versus a 103 Dyna variant, you do get a bit of better suspension, but in my opinion, I'll shut it down and say they both need to be replaced with something.
Yeah, they both ain't too sharp.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
They need to be replaced. So yeah, they are better, but save your money and replace them anyway. So that's much and much, just in my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Dakota, the gauges, where are we at with them?
Yeah, so the Super Glide gauge is obviously a lot different to the Street Bob gauge as well as the Lowrider S. But one main thing with the Lowrider S compared to the Street Bob is that the Low S has a rev limiter gauge, I guess you would say, an RPM gauge. The two gauges in the center of the dash compared to the one, and the Low S has fly-by-wire throttle and cruise control, which is another, I guess, plus and minus, depending on what you like. Some people like the cable throttles because the fly-by-wire is a lot touchier, I guess you could say, a lot more instant. But
and depends how picky you are. I can tell you, because I am picky, when you're kind of rolling on the throttle and you're cruising, it does have, you might be holding it at, let's say 20%. It does have a progressive takeoff, even though you're not turning the throttle. So in relevance, when you're doing wheelies or even skids, probably not at 20% throttle, but it does have that, it's doing things that this isn't doing.
yeah.
So people do prefer the cable throttle in some instances.
You just have a bit more feel, I guess you could say. And especially for those stunt guys, you can make it as slack as you want, especially if you're doing wheelies and that. We're not going to grab a handful as well as you will on that.
But me riding this, honestly, I'm happy with it. I would prefer it because then I get cruise control. So,
yeah. Which on those long trips is, I wish I have it. Sometimes I just wind my throttle lock on and make my own.
That we do not recommend that. Or recommend anyone doing
recommend that.
Even after you've done a big ride and you're tired and you're cruising home, not that you should be thinking this way and putting your headspace in that spot where you're not thinking about where you're riding, is I love just flicking my cruise on, come back from a long ride and just switching off and just cruising, listening to music. I love it. So something that I would want. And honestly, all the things that I do on this bike, I never go, oh, the fly-by-wire throttle did that. The biggest thing which I touched on the video is the throttle blade shutting at high RPM. That is super shit, which can have become with a Dyna technician, but we won't go too far into that because we've done a video on that.
Yeah.
Moving back, I mean, the seats, all stocker.
Yeah, you upgrade the seat regardless.
Again.
I think, they're just a single seat on the standard anyways. But the main ones, I guess you'd say the motors, the Super Glides and the Street Bobs come out with a 103 cubic inch motor. where the low S comes out with a 110 cubic inch. So, you know, yeah, off the rip, a lot better foundation if you do want to build a fast motor. You got a better can, you got a 255 in those low S's compared to the standard street bob motors, 103s.
So usually our go-to combo when we're doing motors is like we spoke about Dakota's bike, doing a 107 10.5 to 1 comp setup with a bigger throttle body and stuff like that, and a set of heads. But with this, you can kind of just get away with bumping the compression up with a set of pistons and rings and a 259 cam, and you're there. You're not replacing throttle bodies. There's $3,500, well, $3,000 there.
Yeah.
You're not having to do the heads really, unless you're chasing that extra bit at the top, and it's pretty good bang for buck. But if you were dead set on building like a proper stinker motor, you're replacing all that stuff anyway. So you're really much in muchness.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, if you're going to be spending, you know, upwards of 10, 12 grand on like a hot 120.
And I guess a good thing about the 110, you're already at 110, so you can take it to a 117 if you wanted to. Where your 103, you can go to a 110, and then if you want to go higher, you got to split your cases, and it becomes very expensive.
So what we'll do, we'll just dive from the inlet through the motor just real quickly. So this is the standard intake on this bike, and I don't love the look of it, but it does work the best for power. Look, I mean, you're not talking massive digits, but it works, so I'll leave it. Like we said, a bigger throttle body from standard, and then you're looking at different set of heads. So all MVA heads start out life as a CVO 110 head, just without a bit of refining, and they work quite well for the build that I was looking for. Moving through, obviously, it's a 103 versus a 110.
Yeah.
Standard is actually a bit low on compression, so that needs to be bumped up to suit a 259 properly. On the 103, in my personal opinion, from research and stuff that most of you guys probably have done, their lifters are a bit better than the Screaming Eagle ones these come out with. Screaming Eagles have very fine needle rollers and don't seem to love getting bashed too hard. So there's a couple, not heaps, but motors that failed prematurely when the needle rollers fell in. So that's a bonus in the 103, but you're talking, they're like 280 bucks. So and again, there's something you're going to replace anyway.
The cast cases on the 110s are a lot weaker than the 103. So if you're stunting it, we know a fair few of our friends that have hit the back brake too hard, thrown the front end down, and just blew the front of their motor case off.
And that does happen on the 103s, but very rarely compared to these. I would say what?
Well, anyone I know.
Yeah, most of the boys
has been a 110.
I'm the only one that hasn't, but I don't do wheelies, so that's not a problem for me. The gearboxes are the same, exactly the same. The clutch on this bike is the same, but the pressure plate is a Screaming Eagle pressure plate. So this is the standard clutch on this bike. I haven't ever changed it. I haven't had to do anything to it.
Yeah.
People always say I need a lockup kit, which has its pros and cons. I'm happy with how it is. You are going to get a pretty stiff lever feeling, but we're going to do a little mod to modify that, which we'll do a video on if you guys are interested as well. Dakota, what else you got to throw at me? What do you got?
Standard shocks on your low S's are adjustable, but they're super stiff. Still muchness with the standard ones that you get on the street bike. They're a little bit taller on the low S's, I believe.
Yeah. They're better if you're tight for money. They're definitely better than what a 103 would come
like when I first built this, I took my standard ones off and put low S ones on there, just with a 1 inch. I think it was a Bun King riser to get a bit more height out of them. But failing that,
I guess the bars.
Yeah.
These come at very low bars, so when you do have to put a set of risers on them, you got to budget for cables, which I know that sounds like a cheap thing, but it's not. So when you have the 103, because they do have taller bars, you can come up with a combo to probably suit that. And
because they got the apes, your throttle cables, clutch brake line, everything's ready to rip. So that is a cost you do save.
Because how much are they now?
Depends where you go with. Depends if you get genuine or not.
Yeah. That's another cost. I mean, what else? I guess, the mag wheels. I don't know if we touched on that.
Yeah, mag wheels instead of spoke wheels on a straight bob or a super glide. Obviously, I've changed my wheels, but an exhaust pipe as well. You
Yeah.
come out with a lot better standard exhaust pipe on LOSs than what you do on the Street Bob or a Super Glide.
Just quickly popping back to mag wheels, they are getting expensive. Like I look for a spare set of this so I can just swap a set, like especially a rear.
Yeah.
And like getting a lower S rear wheel is like, yeah, it's not, people
Even
usually
when
want.
I reckon when I brought these, like, and we're going back 5 years ago, I reckon I brought them. And we got a bargain, I think they were $1,200. But we still, they were raw, like they needed painting still. But now, it's, yeah, you're a couple of grand for sure.
Yeah. And if there's anything, just zipping back to the video that you guys want to add to these bikes, that you want to get any questions about or anything, or which one you want to ride, obviously mine. Yeah, this thing's like, it's like in reverse going forwards, the 103. So you really want to get yourself a hands on one of these.
Drop some comments. Which one would you have out of these two? Because they're great in their own ways.
Just every way, this is better.
I mean, you guys can decide on that one.
Yeah, we'll stop talking, we'll let you drop the comments and you guys just let